What happens when a brilliant but broken tech genius meets a CEO hiding deadly secrets? Asterisk. Welcome back. Dignity Stories Z family. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers. If today's tale touches your heart, like, subscribe, share with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss a moment. Now settle in, because this story is pure romance, full of secrets, fate, and one twist you'll never see coming. Thank you for watching. Your support means the world to us. Asterisk. The blood on Ryan Martinez's shirt had dried to a rust-colored stain. By the time he walked through the glass doors of Technova Solutions, his hands still trembled slightly as he adjusted his T-knot from fear, but from the adrenaline that always coursed through him after he'd made someone disappear from his life permanently. The September morning sun caught the reflection of Seattle's skyline in the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for him like accusatory fingers. He was 20 minutes late for the executive meeting, but that was intentional. Ryan had learned that arriving late gave him an advantage. Unsettled people made them eager to please, desperate to impress. Today's agenda included reviewing a new hires optimization project. Some shy programmer who'd supposedly created algorithms that could revolutionize their data processing. He didn't particularly care about the technical details. What mattered was whether this person could be controlled, manipulated, or if they posed a threat to the carefully constructed empire he'd built on lies and buried secrets. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt eternal, giving him time to compartmentalize the morning's events. Marcus Henley, his former business partner, wouldn't be calling anyone ever again. The man had gotten too close to uncovering Ryan's true methods of acquiring proprietary technology methods that involved industrial espionage, blackmail, and occasionally more permanent solutions. Henley's accident would be discovered tomorrow morning by joggers near the Sound. Another tragic case of someone getting too close to the water's edge during Streta's notorious early morning fog. Ryan straightened his shoulders and pushed through the conference room doors. Sorry I'm late, everyone. The traffic from the airport was brutal. The lie rolled off his tongue as smoothly as all the others. He'd actually spent the morning disposing of evidence and cleaning blood from under his fingernails. The conference room fell silent as he entered. 5 executives sat around the massive oval table, but Ryan's attention was immediately drawn to the small figure standing at the presentation screen. Emma Chen was nothing like he'd expected from her employee file photo. In person, she seemed almost ethereal, petite, and delicate, with long black hair that caught the light filtering through the windows. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Dark, intelligent, and filled with a kind of wariness that he recognized intimately. She was afraid, yes, but there was something else lurking beneath the surface. Something that reminded him uncomfortably of himself. "You must be Emma," he said, settling into his chair and studying her face carefully. Every micro-expression, every tell. "I've been looking forward to hearing about your optimization project. The preliminary reports look very promising." Right. She tried to speak and no sound emerged. Ryan felt a familiar stirring of interest. Most people were either intimidated by his presence or tried to impress him with false bravado. But Emma's reaction was different, genuine, unguarded, and somehow more intriguing because of it. "Thank you, Mr. Martinez," she whispered, so quietly he had to lean forward. "I'm excited to share my findings with everyone." As she began her presentation, clicking through slides that showed complex algorithms and data flow charts, Ryan found himself genuinely listening for the first time in months. But more than that, he found himself watching her. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was nervous. How her voice grew stronger when she talked about technical details she was passionate about. The subtle way she avoided eye contact with him specifically, as if his presence unsettled her in ways she couldn't quite understand. "Our current database query system is processing requests in a linear fashion," Emma continued, her confidence building as she fell into her element. "This creates significant delays when multiple users are accessing the system simultaneously." Ryan took notes, but not about the technical specifications. He was cataloging her mannerisms, her vulnerabilities, the places where pressure could be applied if necessary. It was an old habit, one that had served him well in building his empire. But as Emma walked through her methodology with increasing passion and expertise, something unexpected happened. He found himself genuinely impressed. More than that, he found himself curious about what secrets she might be hiding behind those careful, intelligent eyes. The implementation timeline would be approximately 6 weeks, Emma concluded, clicking to her final slide. I've broken it down into phases to minimize disruption to current operations. The room fell silent as the executives reviewed their notes. Ryan watched Emma stand at the front of the room, her composure intact, despite what he could tell was a racing heart. There was steel beneath that shy exterior, he realized. Hidden strength that she probably didn't even recognize in herself. Emma, he said finally, letting his voice carry just enough warmth to put her at ease while maintaining the undertone of authority that made everyone else in the room defer to him. This is exceptional work. The level of detail in your analysis and the practical approach to implementation is exactly what we need. Thank you, she whispered, and in that moment, something shifted in the air between them. She looked directly at him for the first time since he'd entered the room, and Ryan saw something in her eyes that made his pulse quicken not fear, but recognition. As if she sensed the darkness in him and wasn't entirely afraid of it. I have just one question, Ryan continued, leaning back in his chair while maintaining eye contact. The other executives faded into background noise as his focus narrowed to this small, intriguing woman who had somehow commanded a room full of corporate sharks with nothing but brilliance and quiet determination. Emma waited, her chin lifting slightly in a gesture that spoke of hidden rebellion. How soon can you start working directly with me? I have some special projects that could benefit from your particular expertise. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Ryan saw something flicker across Emma's face. Interest, wariness, and something that looked disturbingly like anticipation. As if she knew that accepting his offer would change everything, and was considering it anyway. Emma's hand shook as she packed up her laptop, the weight of Ryan Martinez's offer settling over her like a heavy cloak. Special projects. The words echoed in her mind as the other executives filed out of the conference room, their congratulations, and impressed murmurs nothing more than white noise. She knew what men like Ryan meant when they spoke of special arrangements. What she couldn't understand was why the idea didn't terrify her the way it should. Emma. His voice cut through, her thoughts like a blade. She looked up to find him standing much closer than she'd realized. Close enough that she caught the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with something metallic she couldn't identify. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. Ryan Martinez moved through the hallways of Technova like he owned everything he saw, which, she supposed, he did. Employees stepped aside automatically as they passed, their heads bowing slightly in deference or fear. Emma couldn't tell which. They entered his corner office through doors that must have cost more than her entire year's salary. Floored ceiling. Windows offered a panoramic view of Elliott Bay, where ferries moved like toys across the gray-green water. But it was the office itself that made Emma's breath catch. The space was immaculate, almost sterile, dominated by a massive desk of polished black wood. No personal photos, no momentous thing that revealed anything about the man who worked here, except for the painting. Behind his desk hung a reproduction of Caravaggio's Judith, beheading Holofernes, a brutal, beautiful depiction of violence made. Art. Emma stared at it, recognition clicking into place with uncomfortable precision. You know it, Ryan observed, following her gaze. He moved around his desk with predatory grace, each step calculated and purposeful. I studied art history before switching to computer science, Emma said carefully. She didn't mention that she knew the painting because she'd dreamed about it. For years, dreams where she was both Judith and victim, holding the blade and feeling it against her throat simultaneously. Those dreams had started after she'd killed her stepfather. Interesting choice for an office, she added, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I find it motivational. A reminder that sometimes violence is the only path to justice. He sat down behind his desk and gestured for her to take the chair across from him. Tell me, Emma, what do you think justice looks like? The question hit her like a physical blow. For a moment she was 17 again, standing over Richard Chun's body in her mother's kitchen, the knife still warm in her hands. He'd been reaching for her little sister Anna when Emma had finally snapped. 3 years of his hands on her, 3 years of her mother's willful blindness. 3 years of protecting Anna from the monster who'd married their mother for access to his new daughters. "I think," Emma said slowly, choosing her words with surgical precision, "that justice looks different for everyone. Sometimes it comes through the courts, sometimes it doesn't." Ryan leaned forward, his dark eyes studying her face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable. Instead, Emma found herself meeting his gaze steadily, some hidden part of her responding to the darkness she sensed in him. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. "Neither are you." The admission slipped out before she could stop it. And Emma saw something shift in Ryan's expression, surprise, interest, and something that looked like approval. "Most people are afraid of me," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. They sensed something off. "But you're not afraid, are you, Emma?" She should lie. Every survival instinct screamed at her to deflect, to play the shy, harmless programmer, who just wanted to do her job and go home. But something about Ryan Martinez's way he watched her, the painting behind his desk, the metallic scent that clung to him like dried blood made her want to show him the truth. "I'm afraid," she said quietly, "but not of you." Ryan's smile this time was genuine, transforming his entire face from coldly handsome to devastatingly beautiful. "What are you afraid of?" "Myself," Emma thought. "What I'm capable of. That I've already done." "Discovery," she said instead, which was also true. Ryan stood and moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared out at the water. "We all have secrets we'd prefer to keep buried. The question is whether those secrets make us stronger or weaker." Emma watched the line of his shoulders, the way he held himself like a man accustomed to carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. "And which do you think they make you?" "Stronger," he said without hesitation. Then he turned back to her, and Emma saw something in his eyes that made her pulse quicken not desire but recognition. "What about you, Emma Chen? Do your secrets make you stronger?" Before she could answer, his phone buzzed. Ryan glanced at it, and Emma saw his expression darken. "It seems I have an unexpected visitor," he said, moving toward the door. "Detective Sarah Morrison from Seattle PD. Apparently they found a body this morning and want to ask me some routine questions about a former business partner." Emma's blood turned to ice. She'd read enough crime novels, watched enough forensic shows, to know that when the police came asking questions about a body, nothing about those questions was routine. "I should go," she said, starting to rise from her chair. "No." Ryan's voice stopped her mid-motion. "Stay. In fact, I think it's time you learned exactly what kind of special projects I had in mind." He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents and photographs. When he set it in front of her and flipped it open, Emma's breath caught in her throat. The top photograph showed a man she didn't recognize, but the image was clearly surveillance footage. Below it were others, different people, different locations, all with the clinical quality of professional surveillance. At the bottom of the pile was a single sheet of paper with a name and address written in precise handwriting. Her name, address. And below that, in the same careful script, Richard Chen, deceased, 2019, cause of death, cooking accident. Emma's vision blurred at the edges as Ryan leaned down, his mouth close to her ear. "See, Emma, I know exactly who you are and what you've done. The question is, are you ready to find out what you're truly capable of?" Emma's world tilted on its axis as she stared at the file containing her darkest secret. Her hands remained steady, a skill learned from years of hiding her true nature, but her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Ryan straightened, moving back around his desk with the fluid grace of a predator who'd just cornered his prey. "Since before you walked into that conference room. I make it my business to know everything about people who interest me, Emma, and you've interested me from the moment I read your employment file." Through the office windows, Emma could see a police cruiser pulling into the parking garage below. Detective Morrison wondered if that was Jake's sister, the one he'd mentioned. Worked in homicide, and the irony wasn't lost on her. Richard Chen wasn't a cooking accident, Ryan continued, settling back into his chair as if discussing the weather. The knife wound to the carotid artery, angled upward in a way that suggested someone shorter than him, someone who knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect. His dark eyes never left her face, someone who'd been studying anatomy, perhaps researching the most efficient ways to kill. Emma's mouth went dry. She had spent hours researching, planning, waiting for the perfect moment when her mother was at work and Anna was at school. She'd even practiced the motion on a mannequin she'd bought for the purpose, telling her mother it was for a computer graphics project. The police ruled it accidental because the knife belonged to the kitchen, because there were no signs of struggle, because you'd been such a quiet, obedient stepdaughter. Ryan leaned forward, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper, "But I know better. I know what it looks like when someone kills out of necessity rather than passion. What do you want?" Emma asked, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "I want you to work for me." "Really work for me? Not just optimizing database queries." Ryan opened another drawer and pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the desk toward her. "There are people in this city who threaten what I've built. Competitors who steal my innovations, politicians who can't be bought, journalists who ask too many questions." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I need someone with your particular combination of technical skills and practical experience." Emma looked down at the tablet. The screen showed a detailed dossier on a woman she didn't recognize, Jennifer Walsh, investigative reporter for the Seattle Times. The file contained everything from her daily routine to her psychological profile, complete with photographs of her apartment, her car, her favorite coffee shop. "She's been digging into my business practices," Ryan explained, "getting close to sources who should know better than to talk. She's smart, persistent, and she won't be discouraged by normal intimidation tactics." Emma scrolled through the file, her programmer's mind automatically cataloging the information, looking for patterns and vulnerabilities. Jennifer Walsh lived alone, worked late, jogged through Discovery Park every morning at 6 a.m. sharp. She was methodical, careful, exactly the kind of person who would eventually find what she was looking for if given enough time. "And you want me to make her disappear," Emma said. "It wasn't a question." "I want you to make her problem disappear," Ryan corrected. "How you accomplish that is entirely up to you. Your technical expertise gives you options I don't have. A heart attack induced by medication interaction. A car accident caused by a compromised brake line. Simple disappearance that could be explained by any number of factors." He smiled, and Emma saw the predator behind his handsome facade. A B. Creative. The knock on the office door interrupted them. Ryan's assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Martinez? Detective Morrison is here to see you." "Send her in," Ryan replied, then looked at Emma with an expression of casual interest. "Consider this your final interview question, Emma. Are you willing to do what it takes to protect the people you care about?" Before Emma could ask what he meant, the door opened, and a woman in her 30s, Interrettle, athletic, with Jake's same red hair and sharp green eyes. Detective Morrison looked tired, as if she'd been up all night working a case, but her gaze was alert as it swept the room, taking in every detail. "Mr. Martinez," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I know you're busy." "Of course, Detective. How can I help?" Ryan's transformation was seamless, from dangerous predator to concerned businessman in the space of a heartbeat. Emma remained frozen in her chair, the tablet still clutched in her hands. She should leave, should make some excuse, and get out before this conversation went any further. But Ryan's words echoed in her mind. "Protect the people you care about." "We found Marcus Henley's body this morning," Detective Morrison said, settling into the chair next to Emma's without invitation. "He'd been in the water for several hours, but the medical examiner believes he died sometime yesterday evening." "I understand you two had a business relationship?" "We did," Ryan confirmed, his voice carrying just the right note of sadness. Marcus was a brilliant innovator, but he'd been struggling with some personal issues lately. Depression, anxiety about his financial situation. We'd actually discussed bringing him on board here at Technova to help him get back on his feet. Emma watched in fascination as Ryan wove his lie with the skill of a master storyteller. Every detail was plausible, every emotion perfectly calibrated to deflect suspicion while generating sympathy. "When did you last speak with him?" Detective Morrison asked, pulling out a notebook. 2 weeks ago? Maybe 3? He called to set up a meeting about a potential partnership, but he never showed up for the appointment. Ryan frowned, as if trying to remember. "I tried calling him back several times, but he never answered. I assumed he'd changed his mind about working with us." Detective Morrison made a note, then looked up at Emma. "I'm sorry, I don't think we've been introduced." "I'm Detective Sarah Morrison, Seattle PD." "Emma Chen," she replied, hoping her voice didn't betray the anxiety clawing at her throat. "I just started working here today. Emma is our new optimization specialist," Ryan added smoothly. "She's been briefing me on some exciting new projects. In fact, we were just discussing her first assignment when you arrived." Detective Morrison nodded politely, but Emma caught the way her eyes lingered on the tablets still clutched in Emma's hands. The screen had gone dark, but Emma wondered what the detective might have seen if she'd arrived a few minutes earlier. "To keep you from important work," Detective Morrison said, standing and handing Ryan her card. "If you think of anything else about Mr. Henley Onion he might have been worried about, any financial or personal troubles that might have contributed to his state of mind, please give me a call." "Of course," Ryan said, walking her to the door. "Marcus was a good man who deserved better than this. If there's anything I can do to help his family, please let me know." After the detective left, Ryan closed the door and turned back to Emma, who hadn't moved from her chair. "That was very educational," he said, returning to his desk. "Detective Morrison is exactly the kind of thorough investigator who could cause problems if she decides to look too closely at certain business practices." He sat down and regarded Emma with those dark, penetrating eyes. "Which brings me to my real offer, Emma. Not just a job, but a partnership." Emma looked down at the tablet, at Jennifer Walsh's photograph staring back at her. The reporter was young, maybe 5 years older than Emma herself, with kind eyes and a smile that suggested she genuinely cared about the stories she told. "I need time to think," Emma said quietly. Ryan replied, his voice hardening. "You don't?" While Detective Morrison was asking her questions. "My security team was conducting a routine background check on our newest employee. He pulled out his phone and showed Emma the screen. It displayed a photograph of her sister Anna leaving her apartment in Portland, unaware that she was being watched." Emma's blood turned to ice. "You stay away from her. That's entirely up to you," Ryan said calmly. "Anna is safe as long as you're useful to me. But if you decide to be noble, if you think you can walk away from this and pretend it never happened..." He shrugged, letting the threat hang in the air. Emma closed her eyes and saw Anna's face the night Emma had finally told her what their stepfather had been doing. The relief in her sister's eyes when she realized the monster was dead, that she would never have to be afraid again. Anna was in college now, studying to become a teacher, building the normal life Emma had killed to protect. When she opened her eyes, Ryan was watching her with something that might have been sympathy if it hadn't been coming from a sociopath. "I'll do it," Emma said, the words falling from her lips like stones into still water. "But I have conditions." Ryan smiled. And Emma realized with crystalline clarity that she had just stepped across a line she would never be able to uncross. 3 weeks into her new arrangement with Ryan Martinez, Emma had become someone she barely recognized. The shy programmer who trembled in conference rooms was gone, replaced by a woman who could hack traffic light systems to cause precisely timed accidents, who could create untraceable digital footprints for people who needed to disappear, who could forge death certificates with the same precision she once applied to optimizing code. Jennifer Walsh had been her first real test. Emma had spent days studying the reporter's habits, mapping her digital life, searching for the perfect vulnerability. In the end, it had been almost disappointingly simply a compromised insulin pump that delivered a fatal dose during Jennifer's morning jog. The death was ruled a tragic malfunction of faulty medical equipment, and the story Jennifer had been investigating died with her. But each assignment that followed had chipped away another piece of Emma's soul. A city councilman who opposed Ryan's development projects suffered a heart attack caused by an experimental drug slipped into his coffee. A rival tech CEO's daughter was kidnapped and released only after her father agreed to sell his company to a shell corporation controlled by Ryan an FBI agent investigating corporate espionage. Charges against Technova lost his entire case when evidence mysteriously disappeared from secured databases. His career destroyed by accusations of incompetence. Emma told herself she was protecting Anna, that everything she did was justified by her sister's safety. But late at night, lying in her new luxury apartment that Ryan insisted she move into for security reasons, she sometimes wondered if she was protecting Anna from Ryan or from herself. The breaking point came on a rain-soaked Thursday evening. In October, Emma sat in her car outside Discovery Park, watching Jake Morrison through heat-powered binoculars as he fed ducks by the pond with his 6-year-old nephew. The boy laughed as the ducks fought over pieces of bread, his joy infectious even from a distance. Ryan's latest assignment was simple. Jake had been asking too many questions about the changes he'd noticed in Emma, getting too close to figuring out that the sweet, shy woman he'd befriended was responsible for a string of perfectly orchestrated tragedies. He'd even mentioned his concerns to his sister, Detective Morrison, who was already suspicious about the number of accidents and coincidences surrounding people who'd opposed Technova's interests. "Make it look personal," Ryan had instructed. That morning, handing Emma Jake's complete psychological profile, he's got a history of depression, family issues, financial stress from supporting his sister's kids since her divorce. A suicide would be believable. But as Emma watched Jake lift his nephew onto his shoulders, pointing out different types of waterfowl with the patience of someone who genuinely loved children, she felt something inside her shatter. This was Jakai kind, gentle Jake who'd tried to make her feel welcome on her first day, who brought her coffee when she worked late, who'd never done anything but try to be her friend. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Timeline moved up. Has to happen tonight. Sister's getting close. Emma closed her eyes and made a choice that would destroy everything. Instead of following Jake home and staging his death, she drove to the Seattle Police Department. Detective Morrison was working late, as Emma had known she would be. The bullpen was nearly empty except for a few detectives finishing paperwork and a cleaning crew working their way through the desks. Emma's hand shook as she approached Sarah Morrison's desk, clutching the flash drive that contained everything Ryan's kill orders. The evidence she'd compiled of his crimes, detailed confessions of her own involvement in 12 deaths over the past 3 weeks, Emma. Detective Morrison looked up in surprise. "What are you doing here? Is everything okay?" "No," Emma whispered, setting the flash drive on the detective's desk. "Nothing is okay. I need to tell you about Ryan Martinez, about what he's been making me do, about what I've become." For the next 4 hours, Emma laid bare her soul in a police interview room. She confessed to every crime, provided evidence for every death, explained the elaborate system of coercion and manipulation Ryan had built around her. Detective Morrison listened with growing horror as Emma described how she'd been turned into a weapon, how her technical skills had been perverted into instruments of murder. "Where's your sister now?" Morrison asked when Emma finished her statement. "Safe house in Vancouver. I moved her there last week when I realized I couldn't keep doing this." Emma's voice was hoarse from talking. "I told her I was going into witness protection because of corporate espionage charges. She doesn't know about any of this, Detective." Morrison nodded grimly. "We'll need to coordinate with Canadian authorities to keep her protected. Ryan Martinez isn't going to just let you walk away from this." As if summoned by her words, Emma's phone rang. Ryan's name appeared on the screen, and Detective Morrison gestured for Emma to answer while she activated the recording equipment. "Hello, Emma." Ryan's voice was calm, almost cheerful. "I hear you've been having conversations with people you shouldn't. It's very disappointing." "It's over, Ryan," Emma said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "I've told them. Everything." "Have you?" Ryan chuckled softly. "Because right now I'm looking at your sister's apartment building in Vancouver. Beautiful view of the harbor from her bedroom window. She looks so peaceful when she sleeps." Emma's blood turned to ice. "You said you'd leave her alone if I cooperated. You were cooperating so beautifully until tonight. But now that you've decided to become a liability," Ryan's voice hardened, "you have exactly 1 hour to retract your statement, disappear. That flash drive, and convince Detective Morrison that you've been having some kind of mental breakdown brought on by work stress. If you don't, Anna's going to have a very unpleasant wake-up call. The line went dead. Emma stared at the phone, her mind racing through possibilities and probabilities like code executing in an endless loop. Detective Morrison was already on her radio, coordinating with Vancouver police to secure Anna's location. But Emma knew it was too late. Ryan's reach extended far beyond Seattle, and if he wanted Anna dead, no amount of police protection would be enough.
Unless
Emma gave him something he wanted more. Detective Emma said quietly, interrupting Morrison's urgent radio conversation. I need to make a deal with you, a very specific kind of deal. Morrison looked at her warily. What kind of deal? The kind where I go back to Ryan Martinez, continue working for him, and help you build an airtight case from the inside? Emma's voice grew stronger as the plan crystallized in her mind. The kind where I become your informant instead of his weapon. Emma, that's incredibly dangerous. If he suspects for even a second that you're working with us, then he'll kill me, Emma finished calmly. But if I don't try, he'll kill Anna anyway, and then probably me, and then find someone else to do what I've been doing. At least this way, we might be able to stop him. Detective Morrison studied Emma's face, looking for any sign of deception or hidden agenda. What she found instead was a woman who'd already made peace with her own probable death. What do you need from me? Morrison asked finally. Emma smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it felt genuine. I need you to trust that I'm not the monster I've become, and I need you to be ready to move fast when I give you the signal. As Emma prepared to walk back into Ryan Martinez's web, she realized that she was no longer the shy programmer who'd walked into Technova 3 weeks ago.
Ow.
Nor was she the cold killer Ryan had tried to make her become. She was something else. Entirely something. Dangerous and unpredictable that neither of them had anticipated. Emma returned to Ryan's office at exactly 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before his deadline. He was waiting for her in the dark, silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Elliott Bay. The city lights reflected off the water like scattered diamonds, beautiful and cold. You're cutting it close, Ryan said without turning around. I was beginning to think you'd chosen your sister's life over your own self-preservation. I did, Emma replied, stepping into the office and closing the door behind her.
Eyes.
The soft click of the lock engaging seemed unnaturally loud in the silence. But then I realized something important. Ryan turned slowly, his face half hidden in shadow. Even in the darkness, Emma could see the predatory smile playing at the corners of his mouth. And what was that? You're not going to kill Anna? Emma moved closer, her footsteps muffled by the expensive Persian rug. You need her alive to control me, and you need me functional to be useful. Dead sisters make for unpredictable employees. You're assuming I still need you, Ryan said, pressing a button on his desk. The office lights came on gradually, revealing his face clearly for the first time. He looked tired, Emma realized, older somehow, as if the weight of his crimes was finally beginning to show. Perhaps it's time to cut my losses and find someone more compliant. Emma reached the center of the room and stopped, maintaining eye contact. You won't find anyone with my specific combination of skills and motivation. Technical expertise, psychological flexibility, and the kind of personal damage that makes someone willing to cross moral lines. She smiled, and it was genuine. I'm a very rare commodity, Ryan. We both know it. True, Ryan conceded, moving around his desk with that fluid grace she'd come to associate with barely contained violence. But rare commodities are only valuable if they can be controlled. And tonight, you've demonstrated that your loyalty has limitations. My loyalty was never to you, Emma said calmly. It was to Anna. Everything I've done has been to protect her. But I've realized that working for you isn't protection, it's just postponing the inevitable. Eventually, you'll decide I know too much. Or I'll make a mistake, or you'll simply get bored. And then Anna dies anyway. Ryan stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. So what are you proposing? A new arrangement? reached into her jacket pocket, and pulled out her phone, holding it up so Ryan could see the screen. It showed a video call interface, currently connected but with the camera disabled. One where the balance of power is more equitable. "Hello, Mr. Martinez." Detective Morrison's voice came through the phone's speaker, clear and official. "Is Detective Sarah Morrison, Seattle PD? I believe you know why I'm calling." Ryan's expression didn't change, but Emma saw his hand twitch toward the desk drawer where she knew he kept a gun. "I'm not sure what game you think you're playing, Emma, but it's not a game," Emma interrupted. "For the last 30 minutes, while I was supposedly retracting my statement, I've been walking Detective Morrison through every detail of our working relationship. She's been recording everything." Emma held up her phone higher, including this conversation. "You're bluffing." But Ryan's voice had lost some of its confidence. "Even if you were wearing a wire, anything recorded without a warrant would be inadmissible." "You're right," Emma agreed. "Which is why Detective Morrison isn't relying on recordings alone. While we've been talking, her team has been executing search warrants for your home, your office, and your private server farm in Bellevue. They're also serving warrants to freeze your offshore accounts and seize the contents of your safety deposit boxes." Ryan's face went white. "How did you—" "I've been preparing for this moment since the day you showed me Anna's photograph," Emma said softly. "Every system you trusted me to secure, I left myself a back door. Every file you thought was encrypted beyond reach, I copied. Every offshore transaction you thought was untraceable, I documented." She tilted her head slightly, studying his face. "You made one critical error, Ryan. You assumed that because I was afraid, I was helpless." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Outside, Emma could hear the distant wail of sirens growing closer. "Mr. Martinez." Detective Morrison's voice came through the phone again. "I need you to remain in your office. Officers are on their way up to escort you downtown for questioning." Ryan looked at Emma with something approaching admiration. "You realize this destroys you too. Everything you've confessed to, every crime you've committed, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison." "Probably," Emma acknowledged, "but Anna will be safe. And no one else will die because I was too afraid to do the right thing." "The right thing," Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Emma, there is no right thing here. It's only survival and the willingness to do whatever it takes to achieve it. I thought I'd taught you that." "You taught me a lot of things," Emma said quietly. "You taught me that I'm capable of terrible things when I'm afraid. You taught me that good people die when monsters like us decide they're inconvenient. You taught me that there's always a choice, even when all the options are bad." The office door burst open, and 4 armed officers flooded in, weapons drawn. Seattle police. "Hands where we can see them." Ryan raised his hands slowly, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. "This isn't over," he said softly. "Even if you put me away, there are others like me. And now they know what you're capable of." "Let them come," Emma replied, raising her own hands as one of the officers approached her. "I'm not the same person who walked into this office 3 weeks ago. I'm not afraid anymore." As the officer read her rights, Emma caught sight of her reflection in the dark window. The shy programmer was gone completely now, replaced by someone harder, more dangerous, but also oddly more at peace. She had chosen Anna's safety over her own freedom, justice over self-preservation, truth over comfortable lies. For the first time since she'd killed her stepfather, Emma Chen felt truly free. Detective Morrison appeared in the doorway as the officers led Ryan away in handcuffs. "Emma, I need you to know that the prosecutor is willing to consider a plea agreement in exchange for your continued cooperation. With your testimony and the evidence you've provided, we might be able to know," Emma said quietly. "No deals. I did what I did, and I'll face the consequences. Just make sure Anna never knows the details. Let her think I was a whistleblower who exposed corporate crimes, not—" She gestured vaguely at the destruction surrounding them. Detective Morrison nodded. "She'll be proud of you, you know. What you did tonight, choosing to do the right thing, even when it costs you everything, that takes real courage." Emma smiled as the officer guided her toward the door. "It's not courage, Detective. It's just love." As they led her from Ryan's office, past the Caravaggio reproduction that had started it all. Emma thought about Anna sleeping peacefully in Vancouver, unaware that her sister had just sacrificed everything to keep her safe. She thought about Jake Morrison, alive because Emma had finally found a line she wouldn't cross. She thought about all the people who would continue living because Ryan Martinez would never again be able to use fear and manipulation to turn someone into a weapon. The elevator doors closed, carrying Emma down toward whatever came next. Through the glass walls, she could see the city lights reflecting off Elliott Bay, beautiful and cold and infinite. Somewhere out there, in a small apartment in Vancouver, Anna was safe. It was enough. The end.